Good afternoon, everybody. And I think this session has become a more intense session as we've gone along, so hopefully we'll be able to continue bringing the buzz to this. Keep adding, keep walking, keep advancing, as the great 5th century philosopher Augustine of Hippo said. And whilst it remains true today, especially in the context of developing intense cities, it presents a major challenge in a resource-constrained world. And I want to illustrate the importance of having a clear and compelling vision to add, walk and advance, and of course finance an intense city in a sustainable way, and importantly to create comparative advantage, because we've heard from some great cities and what they're doing to make themselves effective, and in the global economy, making your city better than other cities is absolutely fundamental to all of this. I was going to refer to a few facts, but I think in the course of this conference they've been covered. The world is urbanizing at an unprecedented rate, and competition for resources has never been so fierce, both water and energy, but also finance. And the world is having to shift from the credit crunch, from easy money to the credit crunch, and human resources as well. This is a really key element of intense cities. The talented people and capital that drive innovation are more mobile than ever. They'll migrate to those places that have the most aligned offer in terms of brand, strategy, investment, infrastructure, services and culture, the very essence of an intense city. So we've seen the shift in economic power from west to east and from north to south, and that's had a major impact on urban centres. Globalization has meant that cities all over the world are more interconnected than ever before, as capital moves freely between them. These trends are a trigger point for increasing competition and talent worldwide. For cities across the world, whether mature or in the West, are rapidly growing in the East, now is the time to act. And it's really important that we have that call to arms in terms of providing a sustainable, vibrant community for citizens to live, work and enjoy life, to foster economic growth by providing the right conditions for business and promoting an entrepreneurial ecosystem that supports the commercialization of innovation and attracts foreign investment. Whatever the stage of development, there's a need for a clear vision and a focus on comparative advantage. How do you anticipate future growth? How do you finance infrastructure and services? And what do you need to do to turn urban intensity from a resource threat to a resource opportunity? If cities can address these issues, they do have the opportunity to prosper, but if they don't, they'll fall behind. And we conducted a survey amongst 60 city leaders. And as part of our analysis, we developed the model that you see in front of you to help city leaders answer these questions and determine how they could create an edge over their competitors. And one of the really interesting features of this survey was how many city leaders thought that today their cities were embracing the future to stretch ahead. Only 14% felt they were doing that. Whereas 69% that in 3 years' time felt they were doing that. And that really is quite key to the success of creating a successful, intense city. So combining this commitment to sustainability and the ambition to be successful, underpinned by leadership, is needed to build a strategy for urban success, to attract innovative people and businesses, and to nurture a high-performing and creative and balanced environment. It's got to be backed by robust analysis and insight to sell the vision to stakeholders, with the ambition of the reality securing the right resources. And we'll talk a little bit about finance. As part of creating and delivering this vision, there's a collective realization by city leaders that sustainability can help deliver long-term economic growth, high-quality job creation, energy security and cutting-edge competitiveness the buzz that Peter and Marilyn have talked about. When asked which activities they've initiated to support this policy, the degree of implementation by survey respondents varied. Delivering a greener new transport system ranked highest at 86%, followed by emissions reduction at 80% and energy reduction at 74%. But only 37% of city leaders were taking bold action by offering tax credit for specific green initiatives. The very different challenges for developed and developing cities. And I just want to spend a few moments on London and juxtaposing that with some of the initiatives that are going on in fast growth cities. London is a centre for UK innovation and success and built around its scale, the business environment and a skilled and diverse workforce. I think by any measure it's an intense city and it has to address its resource consumption and is committed to becoming a low carbon capital with a target of 60% reduction in carbon dioxide emissions by 2025, which will be 26 million tonnes reduction, which is well ahead of national targets and of targets of other major cities. The Mayor of London and the Greater London Authority commissioned Ernst Young to explore London's role as a low-carbon capital. As part of our report, we outlined 3 key barriers which acted to inhibit and slow its transition to a leading low-carbon city. Competition from other cities. China, USA and Singapore are putting a huge amount of effort around attracting low-carbon inward investment. There's a major low-carbon investment gap. The low-carbon economy is relatively immature and there's a shortage of investment-ready projects which could slow down investment. It's also essential to retain the link between policy and execution. The UK is leading the way in policy around sustainability, but it does need to be executed, and there's a real emphasis on London boroughs creating the scale and confidence in delivery. But a commitment to sustainability in a low-carbon economy is not enough. I think it's captured beautifully by the quotation here at the top of the slides from, again, Augustine. Do you wish to rise? Begin by descending. You plan a tower that will pierce the clouds, lay first the foundations of humility. This commitment needs to be linked to building communities and creating a great built environment. And energy intensity is a very important part of that. In London, it's 40% of emissions. And it's a key enabler of change to deliver the low-carbon targets. But there's some major challenges around that. London's housing stock is very old and very difficult to reach. And the British government's creating a new means of financing energy efficiency through the Green Deal. And the public sector in London has a role to play to ensure that this works. This will improve London's housing stock, build communities, reduce fuel poverty and carbon emissions, and importantly, in the current environment, create jobs. Recycling and the potential for closed-loop living can combine sustainability objectives with community building and improving the built environment. It's much easier to do in densely populated areas, and policymakers have the potential to create the conditions for this to happen in London. Just to contrast that with a few other cities, Dharavi, which is one of the largest slums in the world and part of Mumbai, has had to adapt to recycling its waste. Everything has a value, and also its water is in scarce supply and critical to effective sanitation. But its community is tightly knit and resourceful in trying to impose redevelopment plans, hasn't worked. This represents the challenge that fast growth cities face in improving the built environment when faced with the constraints of space and finance, whilst retaining the spirit of community. Jakarta has got ambitious plans to implement low-carbon public transport to reduce carbon emissions by 2 million tonnes over 10 years and increase the number of journeys through trunk and feeder routes by 1.2 million. And its urban greening programme is also expected to reduce emissions by 1.3 million tonnes. This is a good example of a fast growth city being able to expand its transportation system without the encumbrance of centuries old infrastructure, but it does require imagination and rigorous planning. Chinese cities have led the way with the link to policy. It's extraordinary how they've committed to retrofit to accelerate the development of their solar industry. And we're really seeing the effects of this in the German market as Chinese solar exports are displacing German manufacturing. And of course, Singapore, the city in a garden. It's extraordinary how it's developed since I was here just 6 years ago. It's the archetype for having a clear vision and implementing it. And that's really the point. For cities and countries that continue to be financially constrained, there are three significant barriers: policy, capital, and infrastructure. And these barriers are interdependent. Without creating an environment conducive to investment, capital is unlikely to be invested at the necessary scale, so infrastructure will not be built at the rate required for sustainable growth in intense cities. And to break this cycle, the key factor is producing a clear vision and a coherent long-term set of policies that are centred on long-term national objectives for growth, jobs, energy security, and carbon reduction. And the financial markets are prepared to reward those with good plans. These cities have better credit ratings, and in a world of potential sovereign default, that could make the difference in raising funds, and sustainability is a key part of those plans. The journey towards a low-carbon, more resource-efficient world has already begun, and cities, it is clear, and particularly intense cities, have a pivotal role to play in this global transition and can use it to create a sustainable vision for success and to be the leaders of the future. Thank you.